Renz Talentino, well, good to see you, Mr. Artist himself. Renz, guys, let's talk about some news here because we don't have a lot of news to talk about, but there's a few things. I want to talk about these Ant-Man and Wasp figures, and I'll kind of show them, one by one if need be. I'll start with Mr. Ant-Man because he's, the main character, if you will, although Wasp is in the title. She's a title character too. That said, Ant-Man's really, I guess, I would think more of the draw here, but that said, are these the definitive versions of Ant-Man and Wasp? And I want to ask this question, and I'm going to start actually with Kiko before I get to Ben, because I feel like Kiko might have a spicy take on this one, and I kind of want to get it out there in the universe.
I like to follow the spice.
Yeah, exactly. Let the spicy take marinate a little bit. Kiko, I want to ask these the definitive versions of Wasp and Ant-Man, because this is the second Wasp figure that we've gotten. I think it's the fourth Ant-Man figure that we've gotten. So at what point do we have enough of those characters? Or maybe this is the definitive version. What do you think, Kiko? Where are you at?
There is no such thing as a definitive character.
See, I knew it.
There is no such thing as a definitive character. Remember when they said in-game Cap was going to be the definitive Captain America?
Yep.
And then a year later, the stealth suit Cap magically is the definitive Captain America because of the traps. That's a reissue. How can it possibly be the definitive Captain America? So all that to say, yes, this is our fourth Ant-Man figure. The thing about the Ant-Man figures is that they stay extremely consistent. There hasn't been much iterations in the suit. A little bit, upgrades, if you want to call it that, for some nanotech and stuff. It's not the actual collapsible helmet anymore. It's the whatever you want to call that. Right. So these look good. I think the Wasp is a much better improvement. She was gold and blue in the last one, and this one is more like black and yellow, which looked really cool. But no, these aren't the definitive versions because this isn't the end of the MCU by any means, and they will continue to milk this. And as soon as, the Civil War 10-year anniversary comes out, they'll re-release Ant-Man, and that'll be the definitive version again. So if you're looking for the definitive version and say, I'm just going to wait for this one, waiting for the inevitable this one, you'll always be chasing. You cannot win this game. There's nothing to win. So if you like this figure, if you're missing this figure, definitely consider getting it because you're probably going to get some better, I guess, what's what I'm looking for? The stuff that makes up the actual figure, the materials. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. The materials are probably going to be better. The technology is going to be a little bit better. And the standout, although not officially released, but teased, is Cassie Lang. That's the one I really want because I didn't realize she doesn't have boots. She's got Converse on. She's got tennis shoes on with her suit. And I think that's the coolest thing ever. To start the Young Avengers and all that stuff. And you get these little dioramas or whatever. And I know the big talking point is the Scott Lang head. And I love how they said they literally pulled this off the Civil War one. I think that's the one it was because they're still working on it. And this is not it. And this is the first time I think they've put up the thing right when they announced it saying, this is a prototype. This is pending licensure approval. This is what you're getting type of thing. And so I'm interested to see what it's going to look like because if they nailed that Evangeline Lilly like that, I think they're going to nail this one too. So just give it some time to work it out, get them nice Baskin Robbins licensures situated, and then we'll get a nice Paul Rudd. But are these the definitive versions? No, we know that. So if you want one, get one.
Kiko, what do you say to the people then that are going to wait on Kang for the Avengers Kang?
Then you're going to be, once again, filling a pre-order spot on your wall, and you're not going to have something. You're always going to have a reason to say, I'm just going to wait for this next one. So here's my thing. I think people are not willing to commit to getting one of these figures because they don't really want them. So the thing is, it's like, they'd be a nice to have, but they don't really want them. Because if you want the figure, you're going to get the figure. You're not going to wait for the definitive that may or may not come. So if you're going to wait for the definitive Kang 10 years from now, you don't really want Kang. So that's my thing. They're like, well, you have to wait because, they're too expensive to just get a figure that's so. Okay, well, yeah, I'll talk to you in 6 years then when you don't have Kang still. So we'll see. We'll see. If you really like the character, you will have that character represented in your collection, in my opinion.
See, Ben, I told you. The spice. Kiko would drop the spice first, then you get to, marinate in spice.
Followed up, marinate the spice, sugar, followed up with some sugar. I don't know.
Exactly, bro. You gotta douse the flames a little bit here. So, but what do you think, Ben? Are these the definitive versions? I mean, I know the movie hasn't come out yet, but if the movie's pretty good, could they be the definitive versions? Maybe like Kiko, maybe didn't reference like maybe one of the characters or both of them die, right? Maybe one of them die. That would be a crazy ending. A good way to introduce Kang. What do you think, Ben?
I mean, like, I hope none of them die because I like both characters and I like both actors and actresses. I think, so I understand your question. Are these the definitive options? for me, when I think about my own collection, I'm not necessarily thinking about everybody else's collection. I have 42 figures now, so not a ton. I'm not a completionist collector by any stretch. For me, if I'm going to have a representation of a character in my collection, I'm going to try and narrow it down to one. And it's going to be the film or the franchise that resonates with me most with that specific character. I liked the first Ant-Man film. I was kind of lukewarm on the second, the Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm hoping I really like this one because I'm definitely anticipating it. The trailers have been looking pretty badass. Like, I'm very excited. This may be the definitive Ant-Man for me, because if I like this film the most, I don't have him in my collection yet, it might be the one that I would lean to. I think for collectors who are completionist collectors who need to have them all, I know that this has the closest representation kind of to the comic book origins. So for me, in that sense, it's exciting. I do think that the head sculpt, even though I don't think it's perfect, still looks a lot like Paul Rudd. I definitely see the Paul Rudd in there, and if it's a work in progress, I think it will end up being the best sculpt. So I'm anticipating this will be my favorite Ant-Man film. I'm anticipating that the sculpt will probably be the best of the ones that we've had so far. And like you guys said, the technology has improved, the bodies have improved, so it'll likely be the most posable and easiest to work with in terms of a figure in your collection. So in that sense, yes, I think this will be the definitive version of Ant-Man. But I agree with Kiko, you know, there's always a good chance we're going to see a 2.0 in 10 years that's even improved. These are not limited, they're not numbered. So I think...
And aren't Ant-Man win?
Right? Feel like this is your definitive version if this movie really resonates with you. And you're like, you know, you walk into your collection room and every time you look at it, you're like, that's the movie of the year for me. That was the one that I just absolutely loved. Kang is another good example of that. You can definitely wait for another Kang. I agree with Kiko on that. But I think he's going to be a badass. And I would have still liked to have the very first Thanos that came out, even though that didn't end up looking anything like the final Thanos that we had. It would have been cool to see that evolution. So having that evolution of Kang might also be really, really cool displayed. Right. So we'll see how it goes.
And I love what Fourth Mystery says, is that you can't find the Ant-Man and Wasp from the second movie under retail anymore. Huh. Funny that no one wanted those fuckers like a year ago, right? I mean, you couldn't give those bitches away. And now they're like, hey, in search of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I was like, bitch, you didn't want those a year ago. Now, why do you want them all of a sudden?
Because the movie's hot right now.
I know. So I'm thankful that when Carlos got rid of his, I got mine from Carlos. And
did you?
Not Carlos. I'm sorry. Dante.
Oh, Dante.
Yeah.
Okay.
When he was getting rid of some of them, I was like, you know what? I don't have Ant-Man and the Wasp. He gave me a good deal on them. I'm like, cool. Now I have them. But I got them under retail because I got them when it mattered. And now everybody's chasing again. So.
For sure.
I had them, Ben. I had the original Ant-Man at one point, and I had the Wasp, obviously. And I really liked them both. But when I was trimming and curating the collection, I was like, yeah these fuckers got to go. Because I really liked them, but they just weren't in my top 40, 50, whatever characters. I was like, they just got to go for me. As far as definitive versions, I really like what you guys are saying here. It's interesting because if you're going to play that game, which I tend to play that game, it is a gamble because sometimes it really works out. Like you mentioned, Ben, the Thanos, the Guardians of the Galaxy Thanos. That one was pretty cool. It came with a throne, but by all intents and purposes, that's everyone's probably least favorite Thanos, right? So if you had gotten that one, you'd probably be not as happy when you saw Infinity War and then Endgame and then Battle Damage Endgame and all these, in my opinion, superior figures. Sometimes, though, it works out in the opposite direction, where, like, for example, Avengers Loki for the longest time. That was the iconic version of Loki, and if you passed on him and said, oh, I'll wait for Thor 2, it wasn't as good, or the next Loki, Ragnarok, and that wasn't as good either, and then it was just Loki 1. Honestly, I think that's what's happening with the first Ant-Man. I think the first Ant-Man is the best Ant-Man, in my opinion.
I agree.
But they're all good. They're all good. But you're right, Kiko. They're really not that different. They're all pretty similar. I don't think Ant-Man's on Iron Man's level to where you would need 3 Ant-Mans. Or like they're so minorly different that it's not like Iron Man where, oh, he has a slightly different arm or whatever, but it's Iron Man, so I'll get multiples. Like even Captain America is a good example. Like if people waited and got Endgame, for the most part, like besides what Kiko said, the stealth suit, that Captain America Endgame is considered the definitive by most people, where most people were like, oh, wait for Civil War. And then Endgame pops up and you're like, oh, I'm glad I waited for that one. So it's even
like you were saying, we were talking backstage about Chrome Mando versus the Beskar Mando, because I still have Beskar Mando in my collection, and I knew that there'd be more Mandalorians, obviously. Like, the show is still going on. We're going to get season 3 soon. He's probably going to have, like, a blue stripe on his armor or something. Right. Like, they're going to change it up. But I got the Beskar Mando when I did because I thought at the time that would be the definitive, like, original Beskar look. And that then, if I wanted another Mando down the line, it would probably be because he had like a relatively significant costume change. And then they released the Chrome Mando like months later, right? And it was like, ooh, that actually stung. And I would hate to see this, right? You know, everybody's like, this is the definitive Ant-Man, and then the movie releases, and this is actually maybe just the first suit in the film or something. Like maybe there's another
Classic
version even in the movie.
Yeah.
See,
Switcheroo, right? Like
that.
it's hard to say. And because we haven't seen the film yet, we're not even 100% sure this is accurate to the movie, similar to the gold and black Spider-Man that we got from No Way Home. Like, that wasn't even close to what we were supposed to get.
No, not at all.
One thing I will say, though, to Hot Toys' credit on this, I do appreciate the fact that if we go in and see this movie and absolutely love it, you can hit the pre-order button for something to know that you're going to have something in your collection. I like that they've timed it that way, at least. I know you're not going to be able to get it in your collection, but at least you can feel like you bought something from the film if it really connects with you. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which is why I think, Ben, they had the idea of like, hey, the head sculpt is not done, but let's get the PO out there anyway. Let's get it up for people and say, okay, we're working on it so people can get their orders in if they're excited about the film. We can capitalize on that hype instead of like what they've been doing. Like before, what they were doing is like putting this up for pre-order like 6 months from now. Like when the movie comes out next week, and then the hype's already died down by that point. So it's like, well,
I've been waiting for Namor. Like I just rewatched Black Panther on Disney Plus again the other day, and I'm like, why the heck haven't we got this figure yet? Like, where is it?
I think within Ben, I'm willing to give them a pass because I think the issue is they got to figure out the body. I think that's why.
Agreed.
So but that's a hard figure to make. I'm thinking they're going to make it though. I think they're going to take a crack at it. What do you think, Kiko?
I do. I too watched it this weekend or this week, whenever it was. I rewatched it again, and I just once again thought how good that character was and the design, because it's one thing about Phase 4, for all the silly stuff they've had, they've really nailed the comic book adaptions to their suits and the looks, which has been fantastic. But yeah, man, I think we have a good idea that we could be getting something simply because of the full silicon Wonder Woman 84. They switched that body up. So they know they're going to try doing that. I guess that would be the first male full silicon body.
Well, I guess Bane, right? Is Bane full?
You're right. Yeah. But that's got a shirt on. Right. Well, no, I guess you can take the shirt off, can't you? Well, I'm not 100%
I don't know.
But either way, the bodies are getting made, and so they are doing something. So I definitely could see that. I think you could see some maybe Okoye as a Midnight Angel, perhaps. I think that just looks too cool to not make. Cool. So we'll see. But yeah, I have a confidence that unless there's a licensing issue, that Namor would be worth getting there.
Two quick side notes. Have you noticed that Marco from 16Fix looks a little bit like Namor?
He does.
A little bit. We saw some Photoshopped images of his face on the body, and I can see it.
Marco just needs a big headdress.
And some big earrings.
Exactly.
And secondly,
the septum and the
nose.
That's right.
Thing.
And secondly, I used to have a huge crush, don't tell Shauna this, on Evangeline Lilly from the Lost days. So, And I don't have her in my collection yet, and she looks beautiful as a figure format in this one as well. So I'm like, well, that sways me as the definitive version of maybe even her character.
I will say her head sculpt from the first Ant-Man and the Wasp is the best Evangeline Lilly head sculpt.
You still feel like you like that one more? Right?
I do,
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, granted,
I haven't seen it in hand. So
granted, she's a little older here. I mean, naturally she's aged or whatever, but I think the likeness is a little bit stronger. Maybe it is because of the hair, and we're just not used to seeing that right now.
Right.
I like it.
Because I think the sculpt is really good. But the first sculpt, you're right, Kiko, was very good. It was a very strong sculpt. And I think this one is maybe just the hair is causing the problem. But it's still good. Ben said, I thought I was going to say you had a crush on Namor.
Why do you think I like you so much, Marco? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you guys are friends. But
that's right.
Great thoughts on that one, guys. I want to address a couple of super chats we got real quick.